Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Kramer Show. Got a very special guest. It's kind of like a heritage edition for me. Um, Going back with Jarrod Kilway, one of the people that talked me into getting onto social media when I was telling him that it was noise and uh, not productive and a distraction. But I'm very happy to have Jarrod Kilway joining us today. He's the CMO of the Casa Auto Group. Jarrod, welcome to the show.
Good to be back, man. It's been a while, Brian, and excited to be reconvening and kind of talk about what's happening here in auto.
Yeah, so Britt, let everybody know kind of what you're doing now, what your current role is, and then I want to share a couple. They're asking you a couple of questions because when I want to know what's going on at the tip of the spear, and it's always been like this with me picking Jared's brain from when we worked together to still to this day. When I want to know what's on the bleeding edge, Jared is definitely at the top of the list of who I'm calling about that. So kind of bring the audience up to speed as to what you're doing now, what your current role is, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yeah, so I've been back in retail after some vendor stints now for 2 years, and over here leading the charge at Casa Automotive Group here, El Paso, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona this year.
And how many
But
stores
the
do you guys
role of
have?
stores, rooftops, in essence, 15 rooftops, 18 different OEMs that were spidered through.
Okay, so
And
all
all
different
those
OEMs mixed geographically.
mixed geographically, highline, luxury, domestic, import. So getting to see the state of the industry from all different sides of the equation going on right now. So my my role is actually VP of digital operations, but that spiders through the marketing, the analytics, the advertising, the day-to-day process and execution of what the sales team's doing, but also managing the tech stack, which is something very near and dear. That is something I love to do and continue to push us to evolve and innovate.
So before I asked you the questions, you just brought up something very interesting. So you brought up you're blending operations and digital. For every, I'll say Jared has showed me a different way to look at things in terms of how to take data, and one of his superpowers is how to make data actionable. Because there's a lot of people out there that talk about data and talk about, well, there's this metric, this KPI, and they tell you a lot of things, but converting that into an actionable, tangible result is something much different. Can you speak to that for a second, Jared, before we go on?
It's awareness, Brian. I mean, I literally we just got off a leadership meeting here about 15 minutes ago, and something I did analysis on of the month of November is what percentage of total deals were worked with a customer in the showroom versus remotely, and
What
how
was that
many of
number?
those 71% of total deals desk were worked remotely. So
Makes sense.
now it makes great sense. But how many, and everybody look at the data, it's pretty alarming to see. But how much of those deals, or how many of those deals, had a manager involvement?
Hmm.
Phone call, email, text
Training.
message, opportunity. I remember back when we worked together down at Toyota store down here in South Florida. We looked at phone call reviews and we would listen to calls all the time. I know I'm giving you amnesia just by bringing that up again, but that's how we taught the teams to get better. So in today's ecosystem, with more consumers willing to negotiate and purchase a vehicle online, what are you doing and how are your managers training this next evolution of sales staff to properly present a pencil remotely?
Okay, that's powerful stuff. And I would say that based on the dealerships that I visit, almost 100% of all the training is focused on in-store training, right? And there's not enough of that. I'm of the philosophy, kind of like the movie Dodgeball. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If you can handle a phone up, you can handle a showroom objection, right? If you can handle a phone up, you can handle an internet objection. So why do you think so many dealers shy away from that? Or because I agree with you that if you take a look at it, your staffing should be 70% online, right? Which is not typically the case. And if that's also the case, your training should be 70% online. So what keeps dealers from leaning more heavily into that?
It's really the awareness. I don't think many dealers in today's ecosystem have a clear understanding of how many deals they're worked and how many are in store versus remotely. I don't think that awareness exists. So that's why I'm personally peeling the onion back to try and find this data so that I can help leverage this alongside the ownership at Casa to really hit that reset button. So going into 2026, we're lasered into this and we can really plan and execute at a level other people aren't even aware of the current status.
So one of the things that you brought to my attention, I think in like 2018, 19, and back then I was like, it sounds important, but A, how do I make it actionable? B, even though it's important, if everything's important, nothing is. How important is it? And you said it's everything. And you were talking about capturing PII from all the consumers, capturing their data. And you told me, you said, that every single time that we don't give them information, there's an incomplete cycle. And now they're bouncing off of, and you were showing me the journey, similar to how we now have shopper details on cars.com. You were showing me something similar to that back then that you were tracking. And you said, you can see this customer went from here to here to here, and they're going somewhere else to get that information and then coming back, and often without a trade in. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. Um, and it's one of those things is we look at instances like this with PII and, you know, shoot, that's almost 10 years ago. You figured this would have been already fixed, nothing, no issues, and you don't run into it. But that's not the case. That's still a issue we face day in, day out in retail. But it starts with the understanding of how critical that data is to the cycle journey of the consumer. Here's an example. There's a very large online retailer that is leading the charge of wholesale e-commerce parts to the tune of $13.7 billion in part sales, making up over 30% of all e-commerce part sales online. And it's because they have this garage functionality because the user has to go put their PII in. It's stored in this garage. So this company now holds all of that data and they can see when they're ordering parts for their vehicle. Just imagine what that's going to be like when that online retailer eventually gets into sales, of being able to understand that this customer is buying this specific gasket, this filter, this instance, whatever it may be. And because their demographic is so large, they're able to pull predictive indexing that when somebody orders this type of part, they're in the market to purchase and they have all the data to retarget and do everything seamlessly from that guest experience.
And there's retailers like that. Well, A, you could, something really interesting. If you have all the parts, obviously you could reverse engineer the build data pretty easily and uh, you know, I guess re-engineer the way that that works today. But there are instances, without getting specific, of of aggregators like that that are taking that and then also taking them in different places, selling insurance, selling warranties, financing, all these different things. How does a dealer build a protective moat? I'll give a shameless plug. Cars Commerce, we're really, really sensitive about protecting the dealer's data, not monetizing and not selling it without, not without making the dealer aware or with their permission. But we're trying to protect it. And I don't think that most dealers realize the exposure that they have with all these end user license agreements that they just sign on these contracts. How can a dealer, like, 3 steps that they can do to protect themselves or build a moat around themselves?
First and foremost is making sure that we're collecting the data on the dealer side. I mean, it starts with the collection point. Where is the data being input from? So if it's sales, where does it start and what journey path does it pass through?
And not just
CRM?
email.
No, everything. So from the CRM, where does the CRM push to? Is it the DMS? Is it the F&I submission tool? What is that flow chart of that sales process? Service, same thing. Where does it start? What percentage is online? Online website service appointment versus people just walking in the door to get to service completed. What is that entry point of that customer data? And then the one that we really don't look at enough is parts. And parts to me is something, and I know parts isn't fun, parts isn't sexy for a lot of people, but for me, I'm using the parts data to alongside with you guys at AccuTrade, because I'm now able to monitor, hey, what's common issues on vehicles based upon OEM to now, okay, here's parts that are being ordered for that vehicle. This may be somebody I need to sit there and talk about an upgrade acquisition opportunity because I know historically this is a common problem. So I'm looking at that parts entry point of where that data is coming from, and it's such a mixed component, whether it's an independent shop or it's direct from a consumer.
How can a
How are we
dealer
get,
that wants to take advantage of this, because right now there's a, like you just said, there's a lot of other outside entities that are intercepting that data. What should a dealer that has like a Dealer Inspire website put on their site to make to basically to block other people out, just like with sight unseen appraisals? So they're going to the dealer's website to get that information instead of to somebody else.
so switching on the website side of things specifically, it's inspecting your GTM containers, your Google Analytics tags.
Mm.
Historically, if we as an industry remove a vendor and sever ties with a partnership for whatever the reason may be,
Here we go. This is
are
where
we removing their tags from our website? I run a tag checking tool. I learned it from our buddy, Mr. Brian Pash, and now I'm inspecting this. But when I wasn't looking at this about a year and a half ago, and I first came into Casa, we had sometimes 20, 30 different GTM containers filled with who know what is existing. So
but you would say
first
that's probably more common than not, right? I mean, I see it all the time.
it's a Chrome extension that you can get that literally run any dealer website against it, and you can see how many Google GTM tags and analytics tags exist on a specific dealer site. And it could be a company that you severed ties with 5 years ago that is still collecting website traffic instance data that is reselling this as a in market or in target audience to somebody else, or even yourself that you're buying from, and you're buying your own website. So
So right.
first step, Brian, is where's the data coming from on sales service parts? Step two is cleaning up your website tags and analytics and making sure you only have up who people you are currently doing business with, but also it's going to affect the overall performance of your website. So get your website
Mm.
cleaned up. And then step three is, what is your staff data protection policy? So something big I
So
know
build
for
on
you,
that thread. Keep going.
I said I'm going to pull that one. We're going to turn a little red on this one. We're going to go a little flashback days of how many people are utilizing personal devices. We still talk
Mm.
about it and sharing privacy information. And what is that?
Passwords on a yellow post-it note hanging from the bottom of the monitor.
Exactly. And now you go to still see stores. I'm sure you still see those same things we saw back in 2015, where they're written down on a piece of paper or they're literally on post-it notes all over the place, compared to being in a secure instance. But not just customer data that way, but also how many driver's license are being left on the scanner and copier, how many credit apps are out there exposed. It happens, but really it's awareness of tightening all of that to understand that data is valuable not only to the bad people, but also to the dealership to review that entire cyclical customer journey. And sometimes it never gets input the system to track. So you just paid your $20, $40 average cost per opportunity is now out the window with zero ability to track that consumer journey moving forward.
Okay, so let's connect the dots here real quick. So now, since being over here at cars.com, cars commerce, whatever, I've learned the other half of what you were helping us out with in our former life. So how does what you just said affect a dealer's cost per lead? Because most of them think, well, that's 100% on the vendor. What can dealers do to impact the cost per lead, cost per sale with what you just said, positively
So
or negatively?
I would say there's positive and negatives on that, but most importantly, it's understanding and really having a blueprint of that customer journey path. They enter site A here, they come through cars.com, it's a website referring to their website. Here's where they come, they abandon. I can now start seeing this in a cyclical behavior of people who from cars.com go to Casa Ford website, go to a VDP, pull out. By having this and tracked correctly, I know their next move historically, so I can now start feeding them acquisition type of campaigns. We want to buy your car campaigns, direct, pages to our AccuTrade page on site, for example. And then I can start seeing our referral traffic to that specific trade page for our site unseen appraisals of where that traffic's originating from. So, okay, originated from Facebook off of this campaign ID, which is associated to non-converting website traffic who originated from cars.com marketplace. I can see that for any vendor, for every cyclical behavior by having it digitally.
Now
Imagine if
you're harnessing. Okay, keep going.
I would say, but now imagine that if we had a documented process of walk-in and a better instance of phone and service and parts, we can tell that whole story because digital's easy. That's the easiest one. It's the other ones that have the user engagement from our staff that create the problem.
You're talking about not checking because you didn't get the phone number, the email address, all those sorts of things because you just wanted to get them in. Now the customer shows up. They also don't ask those questions. The PII, which is personally identifiable information for everybody on the call, first name, last name, mobile, email. They're only getting one of those. So it doesn't sync up until they sold the car. And all of a sudden now the other salesperson wants a split deal. It's causing World War III in the showroom because they didn't sync that up. And ultimately that's torpedoing most dealers' attribution model.
And efficiency for their staff.
So let's talk about efficiency a little bit more along this same theme. There was a point in time where there was some third-party marketplaces and you said, look, I'm not comfortable with this marketplace, even if it's free, right? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I want free? And Jarrod said something along the lines of, hey, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And
nothing good is free.
Nothing good is free. So if there's value, obviously paying for it. But what should dealers know? Because what you just said a moment ago is you're saying, the fragmented data, now they're coming back into the CRM. It all says walk in or phone, even though it's something else, or somebody's just arbitrarily picking one third-party vendor as who they're going to give credit to something for. But talk about how there are some vendors, many vendors, I would say, that are taking the dealer's data, even if it's not on their website, they're taking it from other sources and then selling it. So the dealers are paying for it 2 or 3 times because they don't have that data hygiene that you're talking about. And how do you protect yourself or insulate, or what should the dealers know so that they don't get into that? Because I didn't know that, and I didn't realize that I'm basically catching fish and throwing them back in the pond, hoping I'm going to catch them the second time.
Yeah, it's being aware of when you're giving somebody access to a DMS, CRM, website, where we're generating traffic and inputting customer information or customers are visiting that we can track. If you're giving others access to any of this, you're potentially opening up the doors for third parties to literally utilize that data for their own solicitation. I know there's many of companies that will give you this free thing to put on your website to do a FICO score or a pre-approval link or something like that. But what they're doing is they're capturing that instance and they are retargeting that instance off of that IP address to then remarket to their financing, which cuts us as the dealers out from the opportunity to make profit off of financing. You and I have gone through that experiment,
Yes.
and it's amazing. And almost 10 years ago, that instance still happens every single day.
I see it all over the country. One of Alex Vetter's favorite things are he told me tells everybody everywhere we go, unless you're doing editorial content, unless you've got user generated content, the dealer raters, the Reddit of the world, the cars.com editorial content, the vehicle reviews, unless you have first party data and somebody's selling you data, the question you should be asking is, where are they getting all this first party data if they don't have first party uh, editorial generation? Can you talk to that a little bit? Because I think a lot of this intersects.
It's from us as dealers. I mean, that's where it is. I mean, it's coming from us as dealers that are letting people in the back door of the systems and not aware of what exactly they're doing. But it's to help us sell more cars, or as your favorite saying in the world, get more leads. Because that fixes all problems right there. So
That's a whole nother
uh,
episode.
but you did mention something, Brian, that was very interesting. You mentioned about cost per sale and cost per lead, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit on this one.
Ooh, I
Um,
like it.
we and I'm studying now how many customers on our end are being coming into our ecosystem in multiple different facets. One thing I think we as dealers, especially in today's time, we're trying to make financial adjustments, we're cutting some spend, we're making some marketing adjustments, etc. But to your point, you said it, is we're utilizing CRM data for last touch attribution. That's probably 40% of the overall equation of an ROI perspective of the value that a third party marketplace like ours or whomever is bringing forward. Why, as an industry, are we as dealers not being provided by some third party marketplaces the deflection data? Because there's companies out there that I get deflection data from that I could do a direct attribution that this lead came from cars, came into us, we had the opportunity, and we absolutely fumbled the football. And it's not a reflection of the quality of the lead from that provider. It's just we made a mistake and we fumbled the ball and they bought a car down the street. I'm starting to look at the total ROI for marketing, not just off of what we've sold, but the total opportunities delivered to me by a company of people who are buying. And when
So
we
you
could,
so that's a powerful statement. And just for everybody on the call, he's dropping this on me blind, and I wasn't prepared for this, which is normal, Jared and I. But what you're saying, Jared, isn't just important today. So point taken, noted. But I think that you got two different worlds, and this is another episode, so we won't go down this rabbit hole. But what you're talking about, there's a human element to it, and there's an agentic element to it, and I can see where you're going with this. That's how you're going to be able to dial in the fine tuning of AI and measure it. Is kind of what you're describing. I think that's very powerful in 2025 to be talking about that.
and with the future in 26, with budget constraints, sometimes people try to cut the fat, but they end up cutting the muscle. And they don't realize it till a few months down the road. Then it's not a responsive approach back. It's pure reactionary. So I'm trying to avoid everything reactionary right now and utilize data to make better decisions and leaning on all partners to really understand the value of not just the opportunity that are provided to us at the store that's sold, but all opportunities that come to us that end up buying a car. Because I feel a lot of the times it's not necessarily the provider's fault. There are a lot of opportunities, and you see this day in, day out, of the dealer mishandled it, misfumbled it, or a learning opportunity for the dealership to pull into. But that is still an ROI factor that we brought a direct customer who was in market who ended up buying a car somewhere else. That should be accredited into the value that everybody's bringing into the dealers.
Okay, that's pretty heavy stuff. You get my brain really going into hyperdrive right now. So let's kind of bring this all together. So if we look at the whole body of work of what you're talking about, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but for everybody on the call, there's friction points, right? Somebody's going through the journey on the website. Either they're getting the trade value, they don't get that, so they go somewhere else. They want to get a payment, they can't get it on, clearly or whatever, so they go somewhere else. If you don't have all those things, they bounce and then they come back, and we see that sporadic stuff. Can you talk about how you look at the data loss, that the gross, because I can't, if we could nail one thing for dealers on this call, and I was one of them at one point, right? I want to hold back on a trade. I want to do this. What about marking up a lease? What about with reserve? What about more points of interest rate? We want to, wait till the last minute. The pennies that people are stepping over, I'm sorry, the dollars that they're stepping over to pick up pennies in those scenarios. Can you speak to that? Because I think your perspective is phenomenal at this. Is what's it costing every time that it goes to another website that gets 20 million unique visitors, that gives trade values a month, just because a dealer's not giving it to them? What's that data loss? And then what could you do as a CMO, chief digital officer, to retarget those customers with like Cars social products like we have, where you go on social media and it's a retargeting campaign? If you have that data, how can you weaponize that for dealers, and how should dealers be doing it the same way?
And this dates back to I think it was 2019, right before like COVID really started booming, and inventory was plentiful, and we were almost panic selling to a little bit. We had to find a way to kind of predict the future, and we didn't know. But what we did know is we put a lot of cars in the track program to make sure that we were protected, and
That's a rental car program for Toyota, for everybody on the call.
that paid out dividends for us at an exponential rate for multiple reasons. But it's taking risks now when markets are unknown and making decisions for the future for the consumer experience. But you nailed it.
But what's
If
that
we
look
look,
like?
it's not who our customer was. I'll put it that way. We can't be focusing on who our customer was in the past and they bought this before. It's who's our future customer. We have to start building our experience not for who bought a car from us 10 years ago, but who's going to buy a car from us in 5 years. And you and I are both in a similar situation with our daughters, that my oldest is going to be driving here. And I look at your oldest, and she's going to be buying her first car probably by herself inside of the next 4 years. How is she going to want to buy a car? Would she tolerate the experience that us as dealers are putting her through right now? Or would she find an alternative that makes it simple and easy, like playing Roblox or making a purchase on an
On
e-commerce retail?
Shopify?
Yes, because the interesting statistic right now is this next generation, they don't even want to input anything. And the reason why is they grew up on a time where, they could order things online by hitting pay with Apple Pay. If there's no Apple Pay functionality for your daughter generation, they bounce, they leave, they abandon card experience. So if they're doing that on everything they do day in, day out, how can we expect them to go through all these hoops just to purchase a vehicle?
Well, if they're buying parts online, a lot of those retailers already know who they are. They don't have to put in their name, information. It knows them already.
And that's bringing it all circle back to how important it is for that guest experience to be that simple, but to use our data to make it simpler for them by putting the information that's relevant in front of them at the right time.
So can you talk about when somebody doesn't give somebody a trade value? And I know that that's my hot button, and I bang that drum, and
Exact
I will
versus
continue
range. Hold
to.
on. You want exact versus range.
And whichever one they want, that should ultimately be the consumer's choice. But if they do choose that they want an exact number, which I think a couple 100,000 did last quarter from a large used car aggregator, 60% with AI agents. If that's what a consumer wants and you're not willing to give it to them and they go and get that information somewhere else, now that other, very shrewd marketing engine is now retargeting them. How should dealers build a moat or, a walled garden around their data to be able to make sure that that's happening much less? And how can they go on offense instead of playing defense?
They have to capture that. They have to capture that. But it all goes back, Brian. The mode is now easy. The mode is built off the customer journey path. The it has to be customer focused first, because if we're not
What
going
can
to give
you
it to
not
them,
do?
nobody is.
What can you not do if like, give an example, not necessarily your group, but just in general? You've done consulting and everything. If you see examples of people that don't get clean data versus ones
Oh,
that do, what's the difference that you can do with retargeting and low funnel uh, audience activation?
I mean, you're you're kind of dead in the water. I mean, it's kind of like running your car out of gas. You're trying to drive the car down the road to go pick up groceries and it's out of gas. You're going nowhere. You have no retargeting. You have no cycle. You have no signals to not only what this customer is doing, but also customers who enter from these sources and do this and that. What is their next step of the journey? That data loss breaks your ability to build for the future in terms of marketing strategy, retargeting strategy, as you mentioned, but also as we continue to evolve, and something near and dear to me, of the AI element of what I can now feed AI agents data to help us better predict this next customer journey map and what they're going to do and when they're going to be in market. I will now have a better example for that here, moving forward, to know how to communicate. So it's kind of like a CDP, where that consumer data platform that we host everything, do they want to be text, email, called? If you don't have data, you have no ability to market to that person the way they prefer to be marketed to. Which, if you look at other online retailers that are in automotive that are quite large, they know everything about every single person that enters their instance, how they want to be communicated, where they want to be communicated, and
And
even
when?
down and when, which is the big thing. And that's what I'm looking at now, is what time of day do somebody want to be communicated with? And even they're measuring this on even different price components, price categories. So you and I have studied this data ad nauseum of what percentage of opportunities from online come in after hours, and it's actually gone up. I've seen it as high as 46% of the total overnight.
So
But
the
we
dealer doesn't provide all that information, because I know a lot of them are like, look, my customers are a little bit different. You remember when we took over, a Lincoln franchise in Southwest Florida, which isn't the most, where I live in Naples, Florida, isn't it's not a tech hub. Let's say it's not Silicon Valley, but we were able to get a 99% email capture rate that was actually validated, and find out that the customers actually were okay doing everything online because we were giving them information and there was a benefit to them. And even though a lot of people at first were like, no, these customers are a little bit different. It's a unique situation in a unique market, and things are a little bit different in this little biosphere. And they weren't. The customers were already, they just wanted less friction. When people don't give that information after hours, what's happening with their customer data?
they're finding somebody else who will, because we've made it so easy for the consumer to gather information now, especially, and it's even going to get easier with the agentic AI and zero search clicks and zero search results. It's going to be even easier for them to get information. So if we don't provide that, it's going to be critical because somebody else will. And Brian, it's crazy. I know you and I have talked about agentic and zero click search before, but not, I'm really looking at that if similar to in the future, if we don't have a good presence on AI search results, it's kind of like today's ecosystem where we had a website visit, but we cannot track anything moving forward.
Hmm.
I'm analyzing those two things very close to each other, because We have to have that AI results presence, or else we're never going to visibly get seen in that ecosystem. So we're never even going to get the shot.
So how should dealers be looking at this? This is a hot topic with us, obviously, right? So cars.com's heavy on organic content. We own Dealer Rater, which is that Reddit are the top automotive user generated content sources that are out there, and it's propelling the organic search when you're looking at AI overviews and Chat GPT generative perplexity stuff like that. But and I got this question probably 3 or 4 times just yesterday. How should dealers be thinking about attribution? Because the world, in my opinion, just changed in the last 90, 120 days to where everybody's like, I don't kind of know what's going on. It doesn't fit into my GA4 box. What do I do? Because now when we're clicking on what drove the customer in, walk-ins are going up when you really know it's not necessarily walk-ins. They just don't know what else to click on.
Yeah, and there will be very soon be able to ways to track that, and there are already ways to track that um, consumer journey path. It's not as easy as a website analytics tag on a website, but there are ways to track it. But right now, it's looking at your content. Like you have traditional SEO, and you kind of have to look at now. You have an agentic SEO, and two different kind of directives, and it's really studying what consumers are searching for and what is the search index history. So I use multiple different tools online to see in our demo what is being searched relative to our manufacturers, and really doubling down on content, to your point, of being built around that search backwards, forwards. It's no very similar, Brian, when we had the old comparison pages that we used to build specific models. But it's building those, but it's comparing those two things multiple different ways, multiple different URL structures, SEO tags, H1 tags, mock-up schema on websites without getting way too uber technical. That's part of the basic blocking and tackling now for agentic zero click results that beforehand was a very high level technical SEO, and the I would say the accelerated package that dealers were having to buy with SEO. That is now going to be the norm with agentic search really making an impact.
And so last question, coming around turn four. I said citations and didn't really give a definition of what that means, and I'm taking it for granted because I'm in these conversations every day. Cars.com is by far the leader in, agentic citations, but citations are basically a fact checker, right? That, okay, are you full of it? You say you're the best at this. And anybody can feel free to get on Chat GPT and ask who's the leader in agentic, citations or whatever. But what are these Chat GPT, which is now a large chunk of the search? It's really competing with Google, and now they're everything's changing with perplexity, but as these AI agents are scrolling over somebody's website and it's fact checking. Okay, you say you're the biggest, you're the best, you're the fastest, you're the simplest, you make it easy, it's hassle free, right? What does that mean when I'm talking about citations? How does that work on AI?
So it's using those statements in your schema on your site that you're mentioning, but it's also cross referencing your reviews that are non protected PII protected review sites, Dealer Rater, Reddit,
Better Business
Better Business,
Bureau.
yeah, Better Business Bureau, a big one. So you could say you have the best experience in your town. It will then go look to those and say, this is somebody who's upset, they're mad, so on, so on, so forth. And it negates you showing up when somebody is now searching who's the best car dealer in ABC City. You may have the content to get you into the conversation, but everything else downstream doesn't reflect that. So they don't marry up, and you never show up in that agentic result.
And you can even double, triple your spend, which will definitely happen, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to show up anywhere. You could essentially become invisible if you're given a really bad experience in this new world.
which kind of landing the plane on that one. It's going back to, we have to build for who our future's customer is going to be. Make it simple, make it easy, make it painless, and provide them the information they want in a way that is still giving us the ability to have somewhat of a control of the situation through education, for, and still being able to pull it full circle of information being given, but also creating that awareness when that customer may be interested in that specific vehicle, taking the time to make them aware if they can get everything they wanted and they don't have to get that trim level, that $60,000. They can get those same options in the $46,000 vehicle. And in today's ecosystem, we don't simply do enough of that awareness and education, which is why we're seeing deflection rates as high as we are.
So, final question. Earlier, we were talking about the top three ways to protect the dealership's moat. Gathering accurate PII is the foundation of it. For all the dealers that are on this call right now that are having that overwhelming sensory overload moment that I imagine some people are having as they're watching this, and they're like, what language are they talking about? This is a lot to digest. This is a lot to take in. Where do I start tomorrow if I want to start planning my strategy for 2026 and I want to be agentically, which is an agent, AI agent, agentically prepared for 2026? Let's take it all the way back down to the ABCs. What are the three things that every dealer should be thinking about just from the basic blocking and tackling to prepare themselves for this new world as we close it out?
Step one is, where is your customer data originating from? From sales, online, phone, showroom. Where is it originating from? And from that point, where is it passing through and what systems are touching that data along the way? Same thing for service, online as well as in store. Where is it being captured? Where is it being stored, and how clean is that data? And as well, lastly, parts, which I think I surprised you with by saying parts is now one of the fun ones. But where is that parts data aggregating from, and what are we doing to be impactful of creating that awareness around parts in 2026? So step one, where does the data come? Step two, who has access to your stuff? Is your back door still left wide open and people are able to sit here and come in and grab a little piece here and there?
Former employees with logins still active.
Correct. So and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not just necessarily vendors or outdated GTM tags or analytics tags. It's your OEM programs. Who still has access to the OEM portal? Who hasn't been there for 6 months?
Your social media
Who
accounts.
Everything. So who still has access to that? That could be, extremely harmful to the organization, because it's out there. It exists. So who has access, and what do they have the ability to do with the data collected in there? So
So for the third one, the AI thing, and I understand those are the foundational, like blockchain, those are the foundational pieces, so that somebody can understand the difference between what you were talking about with traditional SEO, the new world of SEO, even for their marketing partners, so that they can fact check their agencies, whoever is giving them recommendations. What do they need to know?
it's dig in, think like a consumer, think of who you're building for it to be in the future, and go have them experiment with the existing process and take notes from them of how you could make it easier, but also what channels and sources that this next generation is seeking information from. And I don't want to not highlight this one enough. And I'm just now first time person on it, but it's both Reddit. I I wasn't aware of how powerful Reddit was,
I wasn't either.
but I'm very concerned, but also excited, because Reddit almost feels sometimes like the new Yelp in terms of consumer sentiment.
It's like Yelp, Wikipedia, and like a
Starbucks.
virtual Angie's List or something.
Yeah, but it's get yourself aware with what Reddit is, because with agentic AI results and have a heavy dominance from Reddit, get familiar with it and make yourself aware of what's going on, but also who's talking about you already on Reddit. So you can get a little taste of what currently exists. And if you were a dealer listening to this, if you haven't done it, go to Reddit and search your dealer name. And you'll be shocked with the number of people who are already talking about you to the community that you had zero visibility to, because to my knowledge, I haven't seen a tool out there that is looking to Reddit to provide responses similar to you would look at from a reputation management type of system. I don't know of anybody who's monitoring Reddit to drive awareness to us as dealers of what's being said about us on there.
No, but as we close this out, anybody wants to know the magnitude of what Jarrod's talking about, I met a salesperson in Southern California, Acura salesperson, that was selling 25 to 40 cars a month from the Lease Hacker profile or Reddit group on Reddit. So because this person's busy. I've never seen anybody in an Acura store in a long, that busy. And I'm like, there's just customer after customer asking for this person. Oh, yeah, it's Lease Hacker on Reddit. And you can look that up and see what it is. But how many people does anybody on this call know that's selling 25 to 40 Acuras a month? One salesperson. That's the power of what you can unlock. Jarrod, I got to tell you that we'll have to do a follow-up episode. There's so much more that I wanted to ask you. We just ran out of time, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and sharing all the wisdom with the country as we close out the year.
It's great always to talk to you again, Brian. Would love to jump back on and do a follow-up in 2.0 and really just help create the awareness of the state of what we're going through right now. But also to help us all plan better together here for 2026 and really look forward to what future of automotive has in store for us, but also, most importantly, for the consumer.
There's never been a more exciting time to be in automotive retail. So with that, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.